Thanks, everybody. I can see people are coming in the meeting. We're just getting settled ourselves and are exciting to chat with everyone today. It is 12:02, and we already are going slightly over an hour with 75 minutes, so we're going to get started. We're also going to record this, so people, if you're running late, don't stress. You'll get to see this later. All right, so let's get started with a couple of housekeeping things, and we will go from there. So to get us started, let's start here. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. The webinar today is Upcycled Foods, Transforming Food Service with Sustainable Solutions. We're really excited to have you here today, and this is an important conversation. My name's Christy Cook. I'll be your moderator for this session. Before we dive into content, let's do a couple of housekeeping things. I want to make sure everybody gets what they need out of this webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. We'll try to answer them as we go, but we really have time set aside at the end. So we'll really look at questions at the end and get those answered. Everyone is muted. And I don't think we'll have any issues with that except for the speakers that are here, so no worries there. We are recording the webinar today, so you'll get a copy of this. You'll also get a copy of any pertinent links or relevant resources. We'll send that along. This will also live on a YouTube channel, so that's exciting. So you can always refer to it. You can ask your friends, and you don't have to leave this on your server, taking up box on your email. If you run into any technical support, you have questions, let me know, raise your hand or put a question in the box, and I'll try to do everything I can to help you out. So let's get started. I want to give you just a little background, and I launched this webinar series and this really discussion series because I've been having a lot of conversations with food service organizations. I've been in food service for 25 years, and lately there's been some things that's been bothering me. What I've been seeing is that people are just, and this is not uncommon, this isn't necessarily new, but people are kind of frozen. They're not sure what to do. This is an overwhelming topic. I get it. There's so many opportunities for action. There's uncertainty. You're not sure where to start. But some organizations are approaching this proactively, and some are reaching this proactively and reactively. We're going to not be reactive. We want to try to be proactive. So we want to do more than just check a box. So here's the thing that we're doing. We want to make sure that businesses are thinking about sustainability as a strategic opportunity that benefits your business. My light is going crazy, guys. If you saw that, I'm going to pause and just say we were having some flashes here. I hope that was a good sign, and that it's really excited as you are about this webinar. But so anyway, we want to make sure that everything you're doing makes sense. We're doing this for business initiatives. We're doing this to make the planet better. We're making sure that people are taken care of. So that's the Action Impact Sustainability Forum. And that's part of what I'm talking about. Today, you have the very first in the series, again, Upcycled Foods, Transforming Food Service with Sustainable Solutions. And we will talk about how looking at upcycled foods reduces waste, contributes to climate solutions, and it really resonates with your customers, which is important. We have incredible leaders in this space. We've got Dr. Laura Ramden. We have Anna Hammond. We have Jeremy Kay. And to me, what makes this panelist group exceptional is it's not just their expertise. It is the fact that they have this deep understanding of high volume food service market. And that's important because food service is different. So we want to make sure that we're able to take these innovative ideas and make them work at scale. Laura and I were talking yesterday, and I told her that I felt like I was sort of like in a groupie, like I was feeling like when I think of Jeremy, Laura, and Anna, I'm like in this group of like, they're like rock stars to me. So I'm really excited that you get to see them here today. So Laura is gonna kick us off and help us understand about upcycled foods and why it's really important to food service organizations. So Laura, if you can, before you set the stage, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and then we'll jump into the content, please.
Hi, everybody, and thanks very much for inviting us to this webinar today. I am a board member of the Upcycled Food Foundation and also a co-chair of the scientific committee with my dear colleague, Jonathan Deutsch, who's a professor at Drexel University, who's a great friend of both Anna and Jeremy as well. In fact, Jonathan and Jeremy and his brother Adam and Anna are the founding members or part of the founding members of the Upcycled Food Association and the movement itself. So you really have some OGs in the upcycling movement here. I'm the Chapel Roan to Anna's Madonna. Let's put it that way. If you want to pick in rock stars. My previous role was the Chief Innovation and Science Officer of Upcycled Foods Inc., which is an upcycled ingredient company, and I come to upcycling having worked at a beer company. I was leading R&D and innovation at a beer company and faced with a waste problem that we didn't know what to do with. So I have been in upcycling a while, although formally as part of the association, the foundation, I guess, for the last 4 years. My job here today is to kind of set the stage and to talk about why upcycling matters and why food waste reduction matters. If you want to go to the next slide, Christy, just as a context setter. And when Christy and I were talking, the focus of this conversation is essentially why reutilizing food waste has value. But in order to do that, we need to start with what's the problem. And if you don't know Refed, you should know Refed. And if you haven't looked at their insight engine, you should look at their insights engine. It really is, for anybody working in waste reduction, food waste reduction, it's really sort of a go-to Bible. And I use this slide here because I wanted to level set. And when Christy and I were talking about what's important to for food service operators, she told me that if you work in food service, you believe that food service is a big contributor to food waste. And it certainly is. It's around 14.2% of the problem, but actually that's not the biggest contributor. The biggest contributor to food waste is what we do at home. So today we're focused on what do we do with how can we change the way we work in that 14.2%. And to put the 88.7 million food tons in context, and really what motivates me to work in food waste reduction and upcycling is that's equivalent to 147 billion meals worth of food wasted. So all of us here, and those of you who are listening, we're in the business of feeding people. Our job is to make sure that people don't go hungry, that food access is democratic, that it's equal, and yet we're in a system that wastes the equivalent of 147 billion meals worth of food. So if you look at the 14.2%, that is quite a significant proportion still. And there's stuff that we can do about that. And that's why we're here today. Next slide, please. I think it's also in one of my new roles at Food X Climate, we talk about the fact that the nexus of food and climate is underserved. So if you talk about food and climate, then climate people think you should be talking to food people. And when you talk about climate, the impact of food on climate, then food people think you should be talking to climate people. And the reality is that you can't talk about climate without talking about the food system and its impact. And according to Project Drawdown, because I'm a scientist, we like to deal in data, although nowadays I would say that's probably a bit old-fashioned. What Project Drawdown will tell you is that reducing food waste has the highest impact when it comes to households and individuals. So this audience here, this community here, you really have the opportunity to be at the forefront of that. And using your artistry, using your alchemy, using your culinary expertise, using your systems and your distribution, you have the opportunity to really educate and be part of that process, be part of that system in changing the way we view food waste and changing the way in which we approach food and therefore its impact on climate. Next slide, please. So just to cover a couple of things that are going on in upcycling before you hear from Anna and Jeremy, who are living it and breathing it. So why did we all get involved in upcycling in the first place? I mean, we did ultimately because none of us wanted to see good food go to waste, obviously, and we all believed in the fact that this was an enabler to creating more democratic nutrition, but also because there is a business opportunity. Let's be honest, right? So it is expected that by 2031, the size of upcycled products, so anything made from food waste, will be around 97 billion. So when people tell you, is there a business opportunity in upcycling? The answer is yes. Next slide, please. There's a multitude of research out there, and if you want the original research, please by all means contact me afterwards, because we have that at the Upcycled Food Association, and we can share that data with you. We do a lot of work with Spins, who do a lot of research on consumers' approach to sustainability and whether or not they want to pay more. And indeed, the research will tell you that consumers want to pay more for things that are better for them, but also better for the planet. Now, I would say the one caveat I'll have with that is that obviously in the current climate, people are stretched when it comes to cash. And this is in an ideal scenario, I would say. So you're probably thinking, when we go to the supermarket, the purchasing hierarchy is different. That might well be the case, but certainly in an ideal scenario, consumers do want to put the planet front and center of what they're purchasing. Next slide, please. If you don't know much about the Upcycled Food Association, I'm here to tell you that we're in the process still of celebrating our 5-year anniversary. And as I said, Anna and Jeremy were there at the beginning. That's why they look so wise, is because they've lived through the last 5 years. We currently have around 200 member companies, and we are continuing to grow and continuing to attract new members. I think what's interesting is that the members collectively have managed to divert more than 1.9 million pounds of food. And I think that's an extraordinary achievement. I think it's important to pause here and say, although this is not the sexiest point that people think of when they think about food waste, because clearly we're in the business of creating delicious food to feed people, but the food waste in terms of greenhouse gas emissions is just behind the contribution of the US and China. So diverting 1.9 million pounds worth of food makes a huge contribution to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore having a better effect on the planet. We continue to focus on certifying products and ingredients. We have upwards of 560 products ingredients. We can have a separate discussion about whether or not we think certifying and having standards is the right way to go for the future of food system. I'm sure that will become a much, much bigger debate post January the 20th. And we continue to grow the upcycle movement, and we're excited. I know that we're collectively excited as being proponents of the movement to have you all here so that we can make the upcycling movement even bigger than it is already. Next slide, please. I need to move on. Okay, I'll go to the next slide because I'm conscious of time, Christy. Next slide, please. Yeah. Many people will tell you that sustainability is a growing area when people purchase. I would just want to mention the Spins data. I think that if you're working in food service, you're seeing it much more than you probably are in retail, but you will see that the top 3 sustainability for shoppers are reducing waste, renewable energy, and responsible packaging. 3 areas, by the way, that are not easy to tackle, and let's be honest, are usually mean additional cost. And we're going to get on to later on when we discuss what that additional cost means for the company, for the person running the business, doing the innovation, but then also for the consumer and how we handle that. Next slide, please. Over the past few years, we've seen 55% growth. So I think that's a really healthy growth trajectory. I could argue that I haven't seen that growth in many other categories across the food system. Next slide, please. And where we see most growth And we don't have a snack representative in this call today, but that's totally okay. We can talk about snacks. Where we see most growth is in upcycled snacks. And I think probably because if we think about language and education and how we take consumers on that journey with us, probably the lowest point of entry is an upcycled snack product. And Anna and Jeremy can talk more about this, about how they're talking to their consumers and customers, because they're both working in different categories, about the journey that they've been on with that themselves. Next slide. I think that's it, actually. Yeah, that's it. So I'm just setting the stage here, given all the experience I've had in upcycling, and I'm now going to hand over to Anna.
Great. Hi. I'm going to try and actually blow through this pretty quickly so that we can get to the questions and let our audience dig in a bit with us here. But I'm Anna Hammond. I'm the founder of Matriark Foods. We've been in business for just 5 years, so just as long as the Upcycled Food Association. And as Laura said, we were founding members. I served on the board for the first 3 years. So Matriark's an environmental impact food company. Started the business after building a healthy eating program in public housing in New York City. And why I always sort of talk about the origins of it are not only because we are a values-based business, but also working in public housing, like working in food systems, is incredibly complex and takes a lot of bringing people along to do something new if you're trying to introduce something new. And that program really was, it was a healthy eating program. The premise of it was, if you don't know how to cook and you're living on a budget, it's very difficult to eat healthy food in a regular way. And so we had a large cohort of over 50 chefs, trained chefs, chef instructors who taught classes. They were courses really on eating healthy food on a budget. So really like doing as much as you could with very minimal resources. Part of that program involved brokering relationships with farmers in Columbia County, which you may all know is the vegetable belt of the Northeast, to donate their produce for the classes so that we would have, better quality food to work with. And the logistics, very complicated. Also, farmers need income. And while our feeding programs in this country are heavily based on donation, it's not a way for regional farmers to really get support. And simultaneously, the data on the negative impacts of wasted food, which really is wasted nutrition, on the environment, were becoming more widely known. So we just saw an opportunity to build a business that could A, divert waste from landfill, B, create better economic opportunities and equity for regional farming systems, and C, create greater access to healthy food for more people. Next slide. So this is a kind of, complicated, uncomplicated diagram of what we do. There's massive amounts of byproducts that are produced from fresh cut facilities. There's massive amounts of on-farm surplus that never leaves the farm gate. There's tons of produce that leaves the farm gate but doesn't reach it to people's plates for a variety of reasons. And we've created food safe, compliant supply chain to capture byproducts from manufacturing. So carrot, celery, and onion remnants. I always use the example, if you see a celery stick in the grocery store, imagine all the celery that's not there. That is one of the items that we're capturing and repurposing. And then regional farming systems as well. It's good business for farmers. It's good business for manufacturers, because if you're manufacturing, you're throwing out 2/3 of what you're buying. You're literally putting dollar bills in the garbage can. So it's a way for companies to make a little bit of money back on money they've already spent, for farmers to make extra money on products that they can't sell in the primary market. And just basically to make, great food from great food. Next slide, please. So the first product we brought to market was a vegetable broth concentrate, partly because it just made sense. You know, we were seeing massive amounts of carrot, celery, and onion remnants. And what do you make as a good home chef or a good institutional chef, if you have time and resources, is a vegetable broth. And we wanted to make a concentrate so it'd be easy to store, could be diluted at different levels. So that was the first product we brought to market. It's also low sodium, no additives. It's free of the top 9 allergens. And of course, it is upcycled certified. Upcycled certified means that at least 10% of the ingredients would otherwise have gone to waste. For our products, we always have a much higher ratio than that. So for this, 9.9 pounds of vegetables for an 18-ounce carton. Next slide. So not only is it an upcycled product, but it compares against other products in kitchens that have tons of additives, lots of salt, or other things to enhance flavor. And our products all are very, very simple, clean label, really bringing the beauty of the vegetable out, and then used as a tool by great chefs to do whatever they want with it. Make soups, sauces, salad dressings, etc. Very, very versatile. And we really focused on creating ingredients that would be chef tools as opposed to, finished products. Of course, this was before COVID, when kitchens weren't as strapped for labor, and so we've started to work on other kinds of products that are more finished products. But these three that we first brought to market still are heavily utilized. Next slide. We also make an upcycled passata. We source tomatoes from a couple of roasters of high-end tomatoes whose machines are, can only roast a certain size of tomatoes. So you imagine what that looks like when you've got flatbed trucks of tomatoes coming in. And even if they've been picked to be in spec, there's just massive amounts that are being thrown out for one reason or another. They're a little too big, they're a little too small, they're a little soft, they're a little less ripe, which makes actually for an incredible quality of product, because we are able to process it within a few days of it being picked, and it never sees a can. So that's another one of the products we have in market. Also has a much lower footprint than tomatoes in cans. And then the third food service product is a straight upcycled liquid mirepoix, and it's just carrot, celery, and onions. It's not a concentrate. It doesn't have, added flavors like the concentrate does. And again, that can be used as a soup base or a sauce base, but increasingly is being used as an ingredient with larger food manufacturers to be able to replace some of the ingredients that they are currently using with a lot of additives with a complete plant-based product. Next slide. And then true to our origins, we've been we work in 3 channels. We have food service, obviously, a small retail line, which really has been about bringing along the general consumer in thinking about climate-friendly food. We have a line of tomato sauces, so an everyday product. It's not a snack, really getting people to think about what they're using in their kitchens, in addition to reducing waste at home, period. Also, what are the kinds of products that you can utilize on a daily basis that are better for the environment, period. And also, again, processed fresh. They're not canned tomatoes from Italy. I love an Italian tomato, but I like eating it there, not here. So really looking at that as well. But we launched last year the first carbon neutral meal, shelf-stable meal specifically for food banks and emergency food, as well as college campus food banks. And it's sourced all from New York State farm surplus, and has also upcycled ingredients, 18 grams of protein from New York State grown navy beans. So just another kind of option, I suppose, for food service. I think when people think of food service, they mostly think of restaurants and college and B&U dining, but food service is also food banks and emergency food. And unfortunately, we're facing a lot more disasters from climate. So this product is really meant to serve as an antidote to all of those things. Next slide. These are some of our customers. We were part of the Food Buy Accelerator for minority and women-owned businesses when we first launched, and that actually was this incredible opportunity to get set up in certain ways that are very complex as an emerging brand. So we sell into Food Buy, which means we're selling into Compass Group as well. Google, Cisco is our main distributor. We also distribute with US Foods. So we have national distribution. And work with some of the largest food service companies in the country. Next slide. We report to our customers every year. Jeremy may talk about this a little bit more when he presents, but we both work with Planet Forward, which is a platform that does life cycle analyses on products and gives you carbon numbers for how much impact your products have. And not only is this important just for everyone to know, how much you're diverting from landfill, what the ultimate carbon footprint of your products are, but as businesses increasingly look to report on scope 3, these analyses can be used against scope 3 reporting, but also it's just incredible for operators and chefs to really understand how much impact they can make through utilizing upcycled products in food service. It's such a massive space. And Laura mentioned, that a lot of food waste happens in the home, which is true, 50%, but food service is the next largest contributor to food waste. And so it's a place where not only in your own operations, but in your sourcing and purchasing and menu development, you can additionally have a very big impact on the food system from a waste perspective. And as Christy mentioned, it's something that customers really do care about and respond to very well when it's socialized. Next slide. And just sort of, this is the last slide, just to say we've been hard at work working with partners. I think when you're trying to work and change a system, you have to figure out ways for people to understand what these changes mean, not only externally, but internally. So we worked with the Google Food team to not only develop products, but to talk about how to integrate upcycled products in food service operations, because it's no easy task to even just to replace one ingredient. We worked internally at Aramark with Harvest Table to socialize how they had replaced their pastes with the upcycled concentrate, as well as the passata. And then, and we've gotten some nice press, which always is great for the company, but again, like broadening the understanding of what it means globally to start to tackle food systems transformation through this methodology of working from the farm to the manufacturer to the operator, to make a real dent in reducing food waste, but also bringing food to its highest use, which is feeding people. And who better knows how to do that than food service operators? So I'll stop there and hand it over to my good colleague, Jeremy, and we'll look forward to your questions.
Before you go to Jeremy, I think it's worth saying, Bill, just saying something about a food service, including food banks. I think one of there are two numbers that motivate me to work with these amazing people, but also to do what I do, which is that not only do we collectively waste 147 billion meals worth of food, but there are 47 million people who are hungry in the United States. So why wouldn't you want to be involved in a system that essentially captures the value, captures the nutrition, rescues the nutrition from food waste that would otherwise go to landfill, and redistribute that and create more democratic and accessible nutrition through some of the examples that Anna shared? Over to you, Jeremy.
Hi, everybody. And Christy, thanks again for the invitation to be here. Really appreciate it. And especially with two of my favorite sisters in arms that we've been working together in so many ways for so many years at this point in time, and it's just great to share this communal knowledge. We each come at it slightly differently, but at the end of the day, we're all after the same North Star, headed towards the same North Star, and that's what makes so much of this special. So we have the Spare Food Co. We really believe that we have what we need to feed people. There is plenty enough here if we just think about it a little bit differently. Christy, next slide, please. So at the heart of what we do here is really using this approximately 40%, and we can argue that number till the end of time probably, but we think that number is actually vastly underreported because of where we've assigned value within the food system. You know, why is that head of cauliflower the most important piece of that plant and not the leaves and some of the ribs and the stems? When you start adding the rest of that nutritional value and that biomass into these numbers, it actually changes the complexion of the problem that we're dealing with and really the opportunity that we have ahead of us. So Spare Food uses that 40% of the ingredients in our food system to create foods and drinks that taste better for you and the planet. You will very, 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 very seldom hear the Spare Food Co. use the word waste. If we do, it's in the context of wasted food, not food waste. That emphasis switch from food to waste. Think about it for a second. Nobody wants to be the idiot wasting food. Creating food waste, but who wants to actually waste food? Just not something that is smart at the end of the day. And a big part of this comes from my co-founder, Adam, who happens to be my brother and an incredible chef. For those of you in New York, Adam spent 20 plus years as chef and culinary director with Chef Dan Barber at Blue Hill and Blue Hill at Stone Barns. Really kind of leading this next generation of thinking around food and farms and use of food beyond, you know, what came out of California in the 80s and 90s, and not even beyond. It's all part of the same story and complexion of the opportunity here. So Adam, at the helm here, really has led to the Spare Food Co. being a culinary first company. And when it comes to food service and when it comes to the products that we create, this idea that we're culinary forward is really at the heart of everything that we do. It always stuns me when people show us data that they've gotten from research, and the top criteria that they tell us time and time again is the food has to taste good. I wish I could say, no shit, Sherlock. But the truth is that we've been—
You just did.
We've been kind of conditioned to accept that if we're going to do something different, it's got to come with some kind of compromise, and we just don't believe that's true. We see these as ingredients. A chef using those ingredients with their craft is really about taking this to the next highest use, as Anna says, of keeping this food in the food system as food for people. It doesn't mean that we're against animal feed or against composting or anything else that sometimes gets leveled at us. Think about all of these inputs that have been put into the growth, production, harvesting, human inputs, as well as organic inputs and sometimes non-organic inputs, even more importantly. Why would we continue wasting those rather than finding the ultimate uses for them? Next slide, please. So when it comes to food service, it's really an incredible opportunity here. And this is why you all are so important to us and how important, hopefully, we are ultimately going to be to you all. And that is that many of you and many of your clients have very ambitious goals around carbon, water, power and renewable resources. But when we get into food service, you also think about things like more plant-forward meals, reducing food waste, and then this ballooning issue of labor and time savings, which also translate to waste after the diner has actually received their food. And so it's really interesting for us to think about all of these as a system, not as discrete pieces, in terms of what we offer, how we offer it, and why we take the approach that we do with food service. The idea that it depends on the year, but we can say roughly 50% of all meals are consumed out of the home. You have incredible power where small changes at scale make a huge difference. And you'll see that throughout this conversation, ways that's actually starting to happen. So with that in mind, we are exclusively focused on the food service channel across sectors, both commercial and non-commercial, because this is where the real opportunity lies. This is where so many people learn about what's next and how they can adapt it into their lives. And I think, go back to marketing 101, when you're looking at the top of the funnel, what are you looking for? Awareness and opportunities for trial. And you all provide us those opportunities every single day through the meals that you serve to people out there, and spreading the word, sharing the story, and talking about the products that you've selected to use from companies like all of ours. Next slide, please. So our first product, which was not our first product, that was a beverage that was delicious, but that is pause for right now, because we really see this incredible impact. When we, with Anna and 8 other companies, were part of the Kroger Zero Hunger Zero Waste Foundation group, along with Village Capital in 2021 at this point in time, we started thinking about how much food is actually left on the farm, how much never leaves that farm gate, and why. And that a lot of that comes from Adam being a chef on a farm, 300+ acre farm for the 20 years, with chefs doing farm chores, farmers in menu meetings, and then ultimately what Adam and Dan did with the wasted pop-ups in New York and London, using ingredients exclusively that were overlooked within their own farm and kitchen, and also from their purveyors. And Spare Starter is really the chef approach to all of that, where we've taken 6 ingredients that are available in very large quantities around the country, things that we all know and pronounce: tomatoes, onions, peppers, cauliflower, zucchini, and eggplant. And we capture these, we purchase these from farmers, and that's a really important point Anna made as well. We make it all the time here. We get the question, another question we get is, this must be waste. If it's waste, why don't you just take it off their hands? You must be getting it super cheap. Well, it's got to be kept food safe. We're asking people to either co-harvest or go back in and reharvest or glean their fields. There's a huge amount that goes into this food coming to us and being a food safe product at the end of the day for all of you. So there is definitely an opportunity as we purchase more for prices to go down. But I'll date myself, that first Sony Walkman was somewhere like $450 or something, and now it's probably around 14 if you can even find the equivalent anymore. But I think it's a really important thing to remember is that new technologies, and although this feels like a very analog technology some of the time, the supply chain innovation is actually massive. It takes years finding the right farmers, people who are philosophically aligned, the processors, the manufacturers, the key customers who will take a chance, take a risk on new companies with new products, doing things differently in their operations. All of those things become super important for us to consider. So Spare Starter really started this revolution, or this chapter of the revolution, for the Spare Food Company, because it really is this vegan, gluten-free, allergen-free, food waste-free product in your kitchens, which through the Planet Forward work, and cannot say enough good things about this partner to both Matriark and Spare Food, that Planet Forward is, but really helping us to quantify beyond the kind of sentiment that we have for our partners and customers, what this actually means. And we take it a step further. So we know how much this 2-gallon 18 pound pail of cooked ingredients is saving you, and we're able to share that information with you, and it's not insignificant. I mean, that 18 pounds is about 6 to 8 hours of labor in your kitchens at $23 to $26, depending on where you live and what benefits you offer and everything else. That's real money that you're saving there. 13 pounds of waste, trim, scraps Depending again on somebody's knife skills, that number can go up and go down, but that's hauling costs, that's composting. You've paid for those ingredients. Would take you as an operator 28 pounds of food to get to this 18 pounds. So all of those considerations are here, and why this has proven so incredibly helpful to so many chefs in large organizations is that it is shelf stable. So already you're not having to sort through product when it arrives. You're saving on all that packaging, but it's also giving you this culinary palette. We call it cuisine agnostic in terms of its flavor profile. While it does have this delicious umami flavor to it, you can really take it anywhere in the world, whether it's Central America, the Mediterranean, or Southeast Asia. It really works across all of those different cuisines, plus, and it gives you this shortcut to production or serving of your product. The number of times we hear from chefs, it took me longer to make the noodles than it did to create the soba, than it did to create the soup or the sauce or anything else, is pretty incredible here. So it does stand alone on its own. It saves time. The kind of unintended consequence of it is you don't need to overproduce, because it really is so quick to cook up that if you see that you've misjudged your pars or don't want to overproduce for a catering event by 20 to 25%, you can get to where you need to be with additional food and on offer that's not a compromise by any stretch within 20 to 30 minutes. I think what's really most important here is that it's also an ingredient for other products. And Anna mentioned Harvest Table and Aramark. It's so interesting how we track one another, because there are real leaders in the space. They are the Harvest Tables, they are the Googles, they are the UMass Amherst and the Vanderbilts and other companies like those, who really are putting their money where their mouths are and supporting companies like ours. And for us, what we started seeing, especially with a number of the chefs that first adopted Spare Starter, is the number one use for the product was actually to reduce the amount of animal protein and supplement that with our cooked vegetables. And that has been a revelation for everybody, so much so that they were blending their own burgers and their own ground beef with Spare Starter in their kitchens. And one of the chefs said, "Hey, couldn't you just give this to us as a pre-formed patty and a brick of bulk blend?" And within 2 months over the summer, suddenly we have a product, and it is called Spare Burger, and it truly is absolutely, we believe, the single biggest opportunity for the Spare Food Co. to make impact at scale and really change and not just change, but make people aware of what's possible here with this. What we've done very simply is, in the ethos of the Spare Food Co., we're not using any whole muscle to grind for our burger. We're only using trim from the beef, and it's all grass-fed at this point in time. It's blended with our veggies. No additives, no milk powders or pea proteins or anything else that you generally see as a binder. This is Adam's expertise as a chef again, working with our manufacturing partners to bring this clean ingredient product to market. And it's finding an incredible home across the board as a alternative to 100% ground beef burger. It really is this trifecta of juicier and tastier, because it's using less beef, more of these veggies, cooked veggies. The plants that we're using are surplus, and the other piece of it is how much healthier it is. So kind of crazy that you can eat your beef burger and still, achieve 40% less cholesterol, 30% less calories, and less saturated fats along the way. It's just, I don't know, every single day is a revelation at the moment with this product, and not just the burger, but you'll see in a moment the ground blend as well. Let's go to the next slide, because I think it's an important, question. Where is this? There's so much time, billions, literally billions and billions of dollars that have been put into plant alternatives, protein alternatives over the years. And it's really important that we continue to explore that and refine that and make it better. But the truth is that 93% of the people are still eating beef. And while we like to think that we're flexitarian, the number of occasions where we actually make the choice for the plant burger or the plant-based burger or the veg burger, if we're a meat eater, and I'm speaking very personally here, is probably 1 out of 10. And so it's become this really interesting way that we can, and we don't hide the fact that it's got 30% of vegetables in it. It's spare burger and it's beef but better. And when people ask us about how that happens, we talk about it very openly all the time. But you actually are making a huge difference. That chart you see on the right, that is an example of one college campus. That's literally how much beef, ground beef, they go through on an annual basis. And when you look at the potential switch to spare blend from the 100% grass-fed ground beef, those numbers, when scope 3 has to take hold right now because so many of these organizations have exhausted their scope 1 and scope 2 opportunities for change, this matters a lot. And for us, it matters that it's not what we're saying, it's what Planet Forward has been able to assess for us. And we're then able, on every single invoice that we present to any one of our customers, give them the breakdown for that amount of quantity for all of these criteria here that you're seeing on this slide. And it's something that we're very proud that we're able to do, that it's not an either or, it's more plants, it's less beef. No, it's both. And to do that with the social impact of a healthier diet and with for a food service chef, a better product because it doesn't dry out when you're cooking off 60 burgers at a time and stacking them and serving them. This has just been an incredible revelation for us, as I said, with some of our customers, so much so that they're actually doing research with their students. One college campus in particular did some sensory research 2.5 weeks ago of a meatball made with our spare blend next to the 100% beef meatball that they've used to date. 50% of the respondents were blind, 50% weren't, were revealed what they were eating. And what you see here again is this product that has this great application across so many day parts, meal types, cuisine types, all using it. The bulk blend is exactly the same. We don't do anything different than we do the patty. We just package it differently. And this is a product that's only been in the market about 2 months now, but really making waves, being adopted by the Google, Guggenheimer at Google specifically, by UMass and Vanderbilt and so many others right out the gate, and for whom we're very thankful, and which gets us excited about the future of ways to put this out there. There is so much more to say, but I'm sure it's going to come up in the question. So I've stopped at this point and leave it to you all to keep us on track.
No worries. Thank you. I think it's really important that everybody gets a chance to understand products. What's the background? What was the story? Why are you doing this? Where's the innovation coming from? I mean, we know we had some questions around costs. I think that was addressed in many ways. We had some questions around time savings and how this product, all the products help with, whether it's prep time, scraps, hauling, labor, the opportunity for that. So it feels like there really you have shared in your presentations a lot about the business case for Upcycled Foods. What do you think we haven't covered yet around the cost of it? Maybe, Laura, I know that I think of like any misconceptions that you might have encountered.
I think generally when we discuss upcycled ingredients and or products with anybody, whether that be customers or procurement or whoever it is that we're talking about, there is always going to be what we're doing here is commercial, right? But what collectively the upcycled movement needs is scale. And I think Anna and Jeremy would agree on that. We need greater adoption and we need wider scale, because the cost structure will change the more adoption and scale that we get. When I worked in ingredients, the conversations that I would always have with the procurement person or the sustainability person is versus the standard equivalent, of course, the upcycled ingredient, there is an on cost, right? Because we need to make sure that the ingredient and or product that we're providing is safe to consume. So there's always going to be some kind of process, some kind of input costs in order to make sure that that product and or ingredient is safe to consume. Ultimately, though, I think the runway shows that clearly the cost structure changes over time, the more adoption we get, and you know, as I said, the greater volume that we drive. So I think Anna and Jeremy addressed it both in their presentations, but I would say it continues to be a conversation point, and really it comes back to scale.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I just can give you like a couple of examples. You know, when we first started processing the concentrate, you know, it was the processor was charging us, you know, X amount. After a year and after whatever, you know, number of truckloads we had sold, and they saw that it was a real thing we were doing, you know, they reduced the manufacturing costs by 15% just in 1 year, which then allowed us to offer those products for, you know, slightly less than we were offering them previously. Additionally, you know, we just were contracted with both Foodbuy and Vizient. When you get contracted, I mean, you know, everyone on the call, I'm sure, knows, like, very complicated rebate system. And if you're an emerging brand, that rebate system is, you know, first of all, you have to figure it out. Second of all, how do you compete with a Unilever product? It's almost impossible. But you can start to nick away at it through contracting processes with specific, you know, procurement directors who might have, you know, a little extra budget for sustainable products, for, you know, in our case, diverse supplier sourcing, but also more plant forward products that don't have additives, things that have lower sodium. So, you know, it's got to be a collaboration really with the first movers in the space. And I think we've all found that those first movers, you know, move a lot. And once you start to get that real adoption through systems, then as an operator, you know, you can give better discounts, and you bring everyone along through that. But, you know, we also have, you know, and I think, you know, Jeremy did a great job of showing this, sort of breaking down, like, how is this helping your labor cost? What is the, you know, penny or less than penny increase per serving that integrating this ingredient adds? And what are the extra things around it that you also get? You know, the story, a cleaner flavor, you know, more customer engagement, more chef engagement in doing something meaningful. I mean, I've never met a chef, I don't think anyone has ever on this call either, who wants to waste food. You know, chefs are the greatest thought partners in this endeavor. And so it's really through, you know, working together that we move the needle, you know, on cost, on utilization, on everything else. So it feels like it's actually like an exciting, you know, it's an exciting way to do something together that everyone feels great about, that everyone knows needs to happen. And, you know, yeah, is it hard? You know, absolutely. It's like scaling a mountain with no ropes most of the time. But, you know, when you get that great partner and you really make progress, and then you can socialize that progress, it also, it really changes the game in terms of how people think about it. And also, you know, not everyone wants to be a first mover, but the people who want to be first movers get a lot of great attention for being brave. And so then it becomes more normalized, and you know, then we're actually transforming systems, which we all do care about.
Just to add one more point here, I do think this idea, though, of looking at total cost is an important one, because it's not necessarily how so many of these larger food service companies still consider their cost structure. It ultimately, for the chef or the person making the decision, the procurement person, it's coming down to margin and cost per meal. And, you know, this extra 7 cents or 3 cents or 13 cents absolutely makes a difference at the kind of scale per meal that they're talking about. And this has been, I'll just say, one of the most frustrating things for us, because it doesn't consider, and this could be a huge opportunity for somebody in terms of measurement and a real cost analysis. What does this mean in terms of packaging and hauling and waste, and how many pounds of food you would actually have needed to purchase to get to the carton of Matriark product or a tub of spare starter. I think it's really, really important. I do think, though, there are some people in the market right now who see that this is, the train has left the station and you're either on it or you'll get on it at some point. It's going to be harder to get on when it's moving faster. And they're working with us to look at margins, to look at strategically where there's value add and they can make a difference. And then there are also some studies that have come out again and again repeatedly, and this isn't new news. I cut my teeth early in my career at Patagonia, and there was so much data even at that point about this, but it's about a 30% value in terms of cost value from a marketing dollar perspective to be first, to be a leader in some of these new movements. And I think that's something that is overlooked. And I'll just use the higher ed sector. You know, there's studies been done over the last couple of years consistently, and it's gone from 60% of prospective college students using the sustainability practices of a potential university as one of the top 3 factors in making their final decision. That number is now over 70% just in the last 3 years. And talk about marketing dollars and value on something like that. These are the intangibles that are, you know, again, we can talk about them, but when you're looking at the P&L at the end of the day, they're not going to show up there, but they do show up. They absolutely do show up.
You know, something interesting that I've heard, I think each of you bring up, is about being first movers. And you are first movers, but I feel like this has been in food service for a while. Like, I think adoption is in my perception, I'm aware of you and I've seen you in operations and moving. I think that, you know, while this is a new product, I don't want some folks to be like, oh, that's a little scary for me. Oh, is it too new? And I don't think that is true. I don't want anyone to walk away thinking that.
Yeah, no,
I mean, arguably most chefs,
we're all we're contractors, but I still think that, you know, it's, if you look at the scale of food service and the opportunity to really change the game, you know, it's such early days. And that's why, you know, people coming to webinars like this and learning more about it and understanding that it's, you know, it's not necessarily complicated. It is, you know, these are new novel ingredients, think of them that way. But also, you know, just they do check a lot of boxes in terms of what your customers are looking for, you know, from a flavor profile perspective, from an environmental perspective, from a plant forward, you know, perspective, et cetera, from no additives, you know. So there are a lot of ways to look at it, I guess. And, you know, this is where the train is going in terms of cleaning up supply chains. So, you know, I think this is just more information for people who are curious and want to get involved, really.
Yeah,
I would argue that chef.
Sorry, if I might just add one more piece to what Anna's just said. Look at what Matriark's brought to market: a vegetable stock. Look at what the Spare Food Company is bringing to market: a beef burger. You know, these are understandable products. We're not asking chefs and operators or diners to do anything different. We're actually enhancing the experience that they have in so many ways. It's not like we're asking them to prepare them differently or to I'll just say it, except that this is not quite like your beef analog in your burger, where people have struggled with that over time. And I think there's something to be said here about, to pat ourselves on the back for a second, the smarts of coming to market with just standard ingredients in one's pantry or walk-in that you can make the one-to-one switch with effectively.
Yeah, I like that. Laura?
I would say that if we go back to the definition of upcycling, it's elevating a food that would otherwise be wasted to its highest and best use. And for anyone working in food service, probably thinks that they do that already, right? So upcycling is new and an emerging category, but in many ways it's not, right? Because I think most chefs and anybody working in food service is taught to respect the ingredients, is taught to respect the food, right? And so probably has already been incorporating upcycling in many of the things that they've been doing already. I think the reason why we have given it a name and the reason why we have created standards and have created a certification and have an association and have been around for 5 years is because actually it needs a movement in order to get its arms around it, in order to reduce a food waste problem. And so we need chefs. We need chefs' alchemy, and we need their artistry, we need their experience in order to drive that movement, because people like Jeremy and Anna can show you with their partners, with the people that they work with, that it's possible that food can be delicious and it can be nutritious, and it can in fact take something that would otherwise be wasted and elevate it to a higher use. I think the role of chefs and the role of food service also needs to be elevated. There's a question in the Q&A about how we talk to consumers and customers. Frankly, when it comes to consumer goods, that messaging has evolved. I over the last 5 years, we started out talking about waste very much front and center, and now with the whole movement has evolved into talking about, capturing nutrition, rescuing nutrition. Chefs and people working in food service have a much bigger role to play in that, not just in terms of what we create and how we utilize food that would otherwise be wasted, but also in the way in which we can talk to consumers about that food, about the flavor, about the texture, about the nutrition, about how it makes me feel, about the experience, about the cultural relevance. That's exactly where chefs and other food service partners can make a difference, I think.
Yeah, keep your questions coming, and we are looking at those, so do keep those coming. There's a grouping of questions that are really in a bucket about integrating into food service, whether it's how you let your customers know this messaging, and also how do you make sure your culinarians know what to do with this product. And so I guess where I'm going with a couple of questions, and Jeremy, I'm gonna bring something up because you sent me some pictures of the work you're doing at UMass with the burgers and the blended burgers, and you had marketing materials out that the customers were seeing and understanding, or at least that's what it looked like to me, Jeremy. So I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no,
But I'm
that's
seeing
great.
that. Yeah. Tell me more.
So I think it really ends up being site and client specific.
Okay.
I'll use the same product from one food service operator who has multiple different outlets in different parts of the country. They have chefs who are telling the story openly, celebrating it, doing pop-ups again and again and again. They have other chefs who made an inline switch, tested it to see whether there was any negative feedback on the product. There wasn't. There was, in fact, more positive, and they've just kept going with it and haven't said a word. I think it's a really interesting, these chefs and operators in food service know their customers better than we do. What we end up offering up is a portfolio of materials and messaging that is brand specific and product specific. So talking at a high level, but then within the product, speaking about sometimes it's led with culinary, sometimes it's led with nutrition, sometimes it's led with sustainability impact, and the overall use of these products, and telling the story of a farmer or a cattleman or whoever the case is. This is nascent, so we're learning so much as we go along. This is some of the research that we're doing. We're very fortunate. We've got, and Anna's had the same, I believe, but we've got, graduate students from Columbia University MBA who have heard about us and are doing semester-long projects to understand a little bit more about this. We've got researchers associated, professors associated with some of the higher ed institutions that we're serving with our products right now. And they're doing this as class projects sensory testing, looking at what's possible, getting the data analysis, making it statistically significant. We're then taking that and going the next level, which is to understand where within the knowledge process, is this something that we just talk about more generally? How much is there even an association in people's minds between food and climate change? Does it matter in the moment when you've just come from, kind of an intense basketball practice and you're sweating like hell and you just need protein? The question there is like, you don't want to hear that you're giving up 30% of your beef protein for veggies. Well, actually, maybe you do when you know that it's a leaner beef product at the end of the day, and you're actually only losing 2 grams of protein in the process. You're still getting that, but you're getting less cholesterol, less calories, and less saturated fats. So it is we're sponges at this point in time. We're testing things, we're trying things out, we're learning every step of the way. And as we move into new markets, as we move into new sectors, this is not going to stop.
I thought there was an interesting question about flavor profiles. Because you're getting, produce tastes different. It can taste seasonally and the soil and all of these fun things. But tell me about that, Anna. You mentioned one thing specifically, and I hadn't heard it mentioned like that, but Columbia County being the vegetable belt of the Northeast. I learned something. Anyway, I love that. But are you finding any changes in flavor profiles overall?
I mean, it's really obviously it's whatever the chef is making with it, but what they say back to us is that it's a cleaner flavor profile. And I mean, that's, that's why I always put up the ingredient comp slide, because it sort of tells its own story. It's like you're using vegetables, a little salt and pepper, a little tomato, a little porcini powder, very different than a million extracts and different kinds of sodium replacements or whatever it is. So, how that feels on your tongue. I mean, the organoleptic testing of that, obviously we all know is somewhat specific person to person, but that's why great chefs are great chefs, because they can taste those really subtle differences. And I think that's what's been really exciting for us, is when we're working with chefs who have a great palate and they're super excited about how clean the flavor is and how much it tastes just like the thing that it is. We're not trying to create a flavor with lots of things that have been created to make the flavor. That's exciting, because what do people want to eat now? People really want to eat clean food. And so, we're just basically helping that along while making the impact while we're doing it.
Absolutely. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, so we've got to wrap it up. And a couple of things I would just say is, we know that Laura has let us know that this market is growing. We know everyone is understanding that our customers are interested in clean foods, nutritious foods, understanding where their food is coming from, flavor profiles. So from an environmental standpoint as well, they're interested in nutritional standpoint. There's products that you have that allow for creativity in the kitchen. There's some that are more well-known, whether it's the burger that you slide in, the spare burger, or the mirepoix, or any of those that you know how to use already, but you still have an opportunity to be creative. And these products are available through broadline distributors. And you can also have the opportunity to be even more creative and work with these leaders on these products to do something interesting. So those are a few things that stood out to me. But I would like to go around really quick and see, I love a call to action. We've learned some things today. What are we going to do with this? And I would love to hear from each of you if you had maybe a call to action for participants today. Anna, maybe you can kick us off, and then Jeremy, we can end with Laura. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, we're in a time of transition. And I hope that more and more people are sort of thinking about the role that they play as a food service operator. And that's whether you're, you know, an executive level person in a company, or the senior culinary director, or the sous chef, or the procurement director, or the person supporting the procurement director, or the person who has to deal with like whether the truck got to the, you know, got to where it needs to go. And sometimes I'd say, like, are we in trucking or are we in food? But really how important it is to collaborate across all parts of your organization to make change, and that's really the way that it happens. You know, and then just like be creative with us. I think that's the call to action. We only have one planet, and we have millions of people who are hungry already, and that will soon be billions. So wasting food in any way, it just is, you know, it's just flat out wrong. And there are solutions, and increasingly there are solutions at every level of your operation. So I think it's really about like holistic thinking, and then, you know, taking the time to drill in and make it happen.
Thanks, Jeremy.
For me, I'd say just get started. It doesn't have to be everything all at once, and that's actually where we've been most successful. All reorders are coming because of expansion across units. Give you a real good example. A university campus has 4, 5, 6 different dining centers. Started in one, see what happens. It works, great, expand it. You want to put it into more products, more dishes and more menu items, expand it that way. I think there's so much like, is it the right? You know, it's just like, it's food. It's delicious food, first of all, and it makes a huge difference. So if we just get started, I think the products end up ultimately speaking for themselves. And the call to action is just that. You know, it doesn't have to be everything all at once, but let's just get started.
Nice.
So my call to action is this. We cannot transform the food system, and all of us believe in transforming the food system. We can't transform the food system alone. We have to do it together. And the role of food service and chefs needs to be more aligned to the rest of the food system and bigger. And the reason I say that is because the uniqueness of where the art and the science meets, I think, is when the chef is in the kitchen. And it could be any chef, it can be a line cook, or it can be a Michelin star chef, but the magic happens between the art and the science when they're in the kitchen and they're looking at the ingredients and thinking, what do I do with those ingredients today? We have to collectively, and I say this from a food scientist perspective, so someone who's worked for some time in developing consumer goods products, we have to work collectively together to educate people that food doesn't grow in a straight line, and that the food that has been provided to you for multiple years and years and years and years, that looks exactly the same, is the same shape, the same quality every single time, every time you get it, is so far removed from how your food is growing, right? And we need to we need to help people understand where their food comes from and where it goes to. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we need that alchemy, as I said, in order to help take consumers, whether they are in a food service location or whether they're buying food in the supermarket, to understand that utilizing all the resources that we've got, food is delicious. And when I say utilizing all the resources we've got, I mean, you know, reutilizing food waste can be delicious, can be tasty, and can be nutritious. Anna and Jeremy have talked about many examples today, and there are multiple across the 260 odd members that we have in the Upcycled Food Association. We have to go fast, but we can't go too fast. Otherwise, we will lose eaters and we would lose consumers on the journey. And again, I come back to the role of the chef and the role of the food service workers who play a role in taking those consumers with us. So I guess my call to action is we need to bring the science and the art and the alchemy together to really transform the food system.
Thank you all so much. Listeners, please connect with everyone today on LinkedIn, send them messages, learn more about this product. The next Action Impact Sustainability Forum is going to be the future of sustainability and food service with Vicki Dunn, Assistant Vice President at Columbia Dining. Smitha Hanif, the Managing Director for Harvard University Dining Services, and she's the Chief of Hospitality at Harvard. Also the Executive Chef, Jay Vetter. He's the Chief Culinary Officer at Harvest Table. And so we don't have a date for that because we just had to change it. So be on the lookout for that date coming, and let's keep all these conversations going. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks.